Two of the greatest voices in music history, orbiting the same world stage, yet few ever saw how Michael Jackson and Whitney Houston's paths quietly aligned. At the height of their fame, their encounters were more than public spectacle. They were built on respect and rare understanding. What really connected these icons, and why did their bond stay almost invisible even while the world watched? The answer lies beneath the headlines, in moments most fans never knew existed. By the late 1980s, Michael Jackson and Whitney Houston were not just household names. They were rewriting what it meant to dominate the music industry. Jackson's Thriller, released in 1982, shattered sales records worldwide, and by the time Bad arrived in 1987, he was a constant presence at the top of the charts. At nearly the same moment, Whitney Houston's self-titled debut and her follow-up, Whitney, were breaking ground of their own. In 1987, she became the first woman ever to debut at #1 on the Billboard 200, and her run of 7 consecutive #1 singles set a new standard for pop success. Their schedules pulled them into the same orbit again and again. Both artists were fixtures at the Grammy Awards and American Music Awards between 1987 and 1991, often sharing the same stages and green rooms. In 1988, Jackson was honored at the Grammys while Houston picked up her own trophies, and both appeared at high-profile industry events like the Nelson Mandela birthday concert. Award show rosters, backstage guest lists, and industry calendars from this era read like a roll call of music royalty, with Jackson and Houston nearly always included. The sheer scale of their achievements made their encounters almost unavoidable. They were the faces of their genres, carrying the expectations of entire labels and fan bases. Where one went, the other was rarely far behind. These repeated crossings were not accidents or publicity stunts. They were the natural result of two careers moving at the same rarefied altitude. In this environment, a mutual awareness began to take root, built on more than just proximity. Praise between Michael Jackson and Whitney Houston was not a matter of rumor or secondhand stories. In 1991, during an interview on the BET show Video Soul, Whitney spoke candidly about the artist she admired most. Without hesitation, she named Michael Jackson. She said Michael would be on the top of her list, and that if they ever got together, they would create magic. Her words carried the weight of someone who understood what it meant to stand alone at the summit of the music world and still look up to another. That respect moved beyond interviews and into the realm of real possibility. In 1999, as Whitney prepared her album, My Love Is Your Love, plans began for a duet with Michael on the track If I Told You That. Studio schedules were drafted, and label executives on both sides exchanged memos. For weeks, the idea hovered close to reality, a pairing that would have united two of pop music's most powerful voices. But the collaboration never made it to tape. Michael withdrew quietly, and George Michael stepped in as his replacement. The duet remained a what-if, but the intent stood as proof of genuine artistic admiration. Whitney's praise for Michael was always public, always specific. She recognized his influence, his discipline, and the way he redefined what was possible for performers everywhere. Their bond was built on these moments of open acknowledgement, not on stage appearances or manufactured headlines. For Whitney, Michael was not just a peer, he was an artist worthy of her highest respect. In February 1994, Whitney Houston's voice cut through the noise of a relentless media storm. When asked about the accusations swirling around Michael Jackson, she didn't hesitate. You can't convict a person of a crime you don't know he committed. I hate what the media is doing to him, she told TV Guide. Her words landed with force, standing out in an era when most stars stayed silent or kept their distance. Houston didn't just defend Jackson's character. She called out the double standard she saw in the press. I see white folks do a lot of things that I don't see in the news. But when it comes to us, it's a big thing. Within days, Deseret News ran a headline that echoed her words, Houston, Jackson, and I are victims of racism, amplifying the impact. The industry took notice. At a moment when even Michael's closest colleagues were cautious, Houston's support was bold and rare. Rumors spread that her team worried about the fallout, but she made her position public anyway. There was no grandstanding, no effort to turn the moment into a spectacle. Whitney's loyalty came through in her willingness to risk her own standing to speak out for someone she respected. In a business where alliances often shifted with the headlines, her voice carried a different kind of weight, one that could not be mistaken for anything but genuine conviction. The music industry rarely rewards public acts of loyalty, especially when controversy threatens the bottom line. Whitney Houston's decision to speak out for Michael Jackson in 1994 came with real, measurable risk. At the time, Houston was not just a superstar, she was a corporate brand with multi-million-dollar endorsement deals and a spotless commercial image. When she defended Jackson against a tidal wave of negative headlines, the response from sponsors and industry insiders was immediate and cautious. Behind closed doors, executives worried about the fallout. Houston's team fielded calls from partners uneasy about her high-profile support. Trade publications speculated about her marketability, and the mood inside boardrooms shifted. The most tangible cost was a lucrative Coca-Cola endorsement. Her contract, valued in the millions, had tied her image to the brand since the mid-1980s. After her public statements, the deal was quietly allowed to lapse, with no renewal or replacement. No official statement linked her defense of Jackson to the loss, but industry commentators at the time drew a straight line between her loyalty and the cooling of corporate interest. For Houston, the price was not just financial. The industry's perception of her changed. She had stepped outside the expected script, choosing integrity over calculation. In an environment where most artists stayed silent or distanced themselves from scandal, Houston's willingness to risk her own standing set her apart. Her support for Jackson was not strategic. It was a sacrifice, made in full view of those who counted dollars and watched reputations. The fallout made clear that loyalty in the music business could demand a steep cost. Tabloid headlines and news specials never seemed to let up. In 1993, Michael Jackson's world was upended by allegations that dominated every screen and magazine rack. Cameras camped outside his gates, reporters tracked his every move, and speculation drowned out music. The pressure only intensified in 2005, when Jackson faced a criminal trial, and the verdict, not guilty on all counts, came after months of relentless coverage. Whitney Houston, too, found herself under a microscope as rumors about her health and private life swirled from 2000 to 2002. Every stumble, every rumor became front-page news. David Guest, a close friend to both, once observed that the scrutiny they faced was unlike anything most people could imagine. For Jackson and Houston, privacy was a luxury, and every misstep was magnified for the world to judge. Their friendship became a rare place of understanding amid the constant storm. Discipline shaped every note Michael Jackson and Whitney Houston ever sang. Long before the world knew their names, routines were set by parents determined to raise artists, not just entertainers. Cissy Houston, a gospel powerhouse in her own right, demanded hours of practice from Whitney, scales, hymns, and harmonies, day after day in the church basement. Whitney called those early lessons grueling but essential, crediting her mother's unwavering standards for her control and power on stage. In Gary, Indiana, Michael's story ran on a parallel track. The Jackson 5 rehearsed for hours under Joseph Jackson's strict eye, perfecting dance steps and harmonies until exhaustion set in. Quincy Jones, who produced Michael's biggest records, later described his work ethic as unmatched, rehearsing late into the night, never satisfied until every detail was flawless. For both, the spotlight was never just a reward, but a responsibility. They carried the hopes of entire communities, aware that every performance meant more than personal success. This shared foundation of gospel roots, relentless practice, and the weight of cultural expectation formed a silent understanding between them, deeper than any headline or rumor could ever capture. In an industry obsessed with spectacle, genuine respect often goes unseen. Today, creative icons still face relentless scrutiny and isolation. Their quiet bond reminds us, behind every legend is a human searching for understanding. Real connection, no matter how private, shapes the legacy left behind. Share your thoughts below.